Hello and welcome to my review of the brand new Masterwork 2H. This is also a new type of video I'm trying to work on to see if people like it, so give me feedback. But first off, this is the brand new tier 100 weapon. We've never had a tier 100 release like this before, so I'm here to review it, explain how to make it, comparing it to some other options, and let's just see if this weapon's any good or if it's a pile of crap. Starting off, let's go over how to obtain it. The Masterwork 2H is created at 110 smithing, but also requires 90 rune crafting, 90 magic, and 90 crafting, along with several achievements. The first one being it should still have been called Ethereum, which is the achievement for smithing +5 primal, and Relight My Fire, which requires getting the Dragonkin Anvil again going, which requires while Gothic sleeps. So these are pretty hefty requirements. In order to create the sword, you need quite the laundry list of items. You will need 10 glorious bars, 1001 primal bars, or 1385 if you include the armor set for the achievement, 10 gold bars, 1 moonstone, 2 chaotic weapons with the cheapest option being the offhands, 2 Drygor weapons, and 2 blades from Twin Furies, and then also 1 undead dragon leather and 1 brown dye. Once all those items are gathered, the long process of smithing and forging the sword can begin. First things first, let's create the essence. This is where the 2 chaotic weapons, 2 Drygor weapons, and 2 blades for the Twin Furies are used. Make your way to the Dragonkin Anvil with a blast hammer, which can be purchased from the blast furnace foreman for 1 mil. This item is not consumed, so no need to buy several like I did myself. And then there you will turn your weapons into essence, resulting in 4 chaotic essence, 4 Calify essence, and 4 Demotic essence. After that, combine your chaotic essence with a cut moonstone and then imbue the gem. This will take about 10 minutes, and this is a theme you will see later on as well. And then cut the moonstone, which will take another 10 minutes. After that is done, we will have everything required to start smithing. So, smith 10 prime glorious bars at a furnace. This will require 1 of those glorious bars and 100 primal bars each. After that, start making a Masterwork sword trim, a crossguard centerpiece, a pommel, and 2 quillins, and lastly an unwrapped sword grip. This unwrapped sword grip will need to be wrapped with a brown dyed undead leather, so that's what that is used for. So you want to use a brown dye on the leather, and then you will proceed to wrap it for another 10 minutes. Once that is all done, you will have the required steps to make the crossguard and then the sword hilt, and that is the first half of the sword created. Now to the final part, the blade. So smith an unfinished blade, then a shaped blade, and then an unsharpened blade. That unsharpened blade will need to be sharpened at a player-owned armor stand or a whetstone. Did I mention this part takes another 10 minutes? And then finally, you can create the Masterwork 2H. The whole process takes about 2 hours, requiring 50 minutes to probably an hour and a half of smithing depending how active you are, and then 40 minutes of all the other processes. So, now that you have it, what makes it stand out? I'm going to throw the Masterwork 2H against the Noxious Scythe, Zuck Sword, and the Dark Shard and Sliver of Lang dual-wield weapons through some tests, and we're going to compare them. But first, let's look at them by the numbers at time of recording. Starting off, we have the Noxious Scythe. It is a tier 90 weapon costing about 370 mil. It has an attack range of 2 as it is a halberd weapon and the best halberd weapon currently in game and the only one that's going to be reviewed today. It has ability damage of 1296 with an accuracy of 2458. It has a special attack, but it is pretty useless. Next we have the Exec Kill, or the Zuck Sword as I call it. It is tier 95, can be upgraded to tier 100 with a Shard of Genesis, The GE price says 1.5 bill, but dropped to 1 bill since the release of the Masterwork 2H. It has an ability damage of 1396 and an accuracy of 2765. This is an improvement over tier 90 by about 8% and 12.5% respectively. And it does come with a rather good special attack that inflicts a bleed for 50% adrenaline. When it's paired with the Masterwork Spear of Annihilation, this becomes incredibly strong, but is pretty try-hard to use properly. Next, we have the Dark Shard of Lang and the Dark Sliver of Lang. They are a tier 95 dual-wield weapon that can also be upgraded to tier 100 with the Shard of Genesis. Combined, they cost about 2 billion together, making them the most expensive option on this list. They have ability damage that is the exact same as the Zuck Sword, but they also offer a plus 18 prayer bonus together, which I had no idea they gave that much prior to working on this video. The main hand and offhand have a special effect and a passive effect that can be, when combined, grant up to 24% damage, and apply a stack that can be used to buff its special attack. The special attack does have a small Quake-like AoE that hits the primary target twice and hits around the player. This costs 0% to 30% adrenaline depending on how many stacks you have, and also scales with damage based on how many stacks you have from the passive. And lastly, we have the Masterwork 2H, the primary reason why I'm making this video. It is tier 100. Actually, for siphoning, it's making it a tier 99, but that does make it the best weapon in the game to siphon, resulting in nearly 12% more XP than siphoning a tier 90. It costs around 250 to 350 mil currently. Prices are fluctuating as it's a brand new item, but making it the cheapest weapon on the list currently. I did just buy 2 today for my ults for 251 mil. It has an ability damage of 1440 and an accuracy of 3100. This makes it about 3% better damage than the tier 95 and about 12% more accuracy than a tier 95. It has no special attack or passive, and it really should have just been called the Overcompensator because it doesn't offer anything other than large stats. That is everything on paper, but how does it look like in real tests? The first test, I just wanted to get a maximum and a minimum hit with each weapon for a damage range and some baseline to work with. For shits and giggles, I will be using the AGS and an EOF and base it off that. These base numbers will just be the weapons and an EOF equipped with no boost or any other equipment, and all the same perks on all the weapons. Starting off, we had the Nox Scythe. It had a maximum hit of 11,898 and a minimum hit of 7,203. Next up was the tier 95 weapons. They had a max hit of 12,379 and a minimum hit of 7,495. And then came the Masterwork 2H, which had a max hit of 12,709 and a minimum hit of 7,695. The summary from this is the Masterwork 2H had a maximum and a minimum hit that was 6.82% better compared to the Noxious Scythe, and it also had a max and minimum hit that was approximately 2.67% better compared to the Zuck Sword and the Ling weapons. And then for absolute max gear and boost, but no Berserk, I did want to see what the max hit was. So starting off, we had the Noxious Scythe that had a max hit of 22,781. The Zuck Sword had a max hit of 23,516, and then the Masterwork 2H had a max hit of 24,318. That made it approximately 6.7% better than the Noxious Scythe and 3.41% better than the Zuck Sword in absolute max gear. Next test is going to be the Dwarven Challenge Barrel, which is a 3-minute DPS test essentially. I will be using Revo++ for this, and I have 2 different bars, one for 2H melee and one for dual wield. Both were taken off the wiki or PVME initially. I was expecting the Lings to beat the Masterwork 2H here pretty hard, as I've always known dual wield to be single target and 2H for AoEs. This test will be in unaugmented vestments, but no other potions or boosts are going to be used. And there is going to be no manual intervention at all. It is just going to be letting the robo bars do their thing. So this will make some weapons perform worse than where they might would if you obviously would use manual input. But it is what it is. It's just what keeps the variables really consistent between all the weapons. The first weapon up was the Noxious Scythe. It had a damage total of 615,000. After that, I did the Lang weapons, and man, I did these a few times and did have to change quite a few things. Just because the first test I did was 565,000 damage, and that made no sense to me why the tier 95s were doing that much less damage than the Noxious Scythe was. So I put this through the ringer, and the best damage I got was 606,000. After that, I did end up testing the Abyssal Scourge plus the Lang offhand, and this did tremendously better. The best damage total I got was 680,000, with all the other tests dramatically being better than just using the Lang for main hand and offhand. So the Abyssal Scourge is miles better, it seems like, for this test. The rest of the tests were pretty simple though. So the Zuck Sword had a total damage of 632,000, and then the Masterwork 2H had a total damage of 658,000. I also did test the Masterwork Spear of Annihilation. It had a total damage of 652. This was mainly just because I wanted to see how much damage it did, because I had the whole setup available, so I was just curious how good it actually was, and it did a lot better than what I thought. So I ended up doing 5 different weapon setups, and they all had completely varying results. And that makes the end results the following. The Masterwork 2H did about 7% more damage than Noxious Scythe. Comparing it against the Lang Swords, the Masterwork 2H was dealing anywhere from like 8.5% more damage to almost 16.5% more damage, which really goes to show how much they rely on manual inputs. The Masterwork 2H dealt about 4% more damage than the Zuck Sword, and then because I just randomly tested the Masterwork Spear of Annihilation, it actually almost did as much as the Masterwork 2H. Masterwork 2H only did about 1% more damage than it. And then the Abyssal Scourge plus the offhand, the Lang offhand, actually did the most damage out of everything. It did anywhere from like 2 to about 3.3 more damage than the Masterwork 2H. So that makes it the winner here. Honestly, I'm really surprised how much the Lang shit the bed. And I tested them more than any of the others. And right after I did the Abyssal Scourge test, I did go ahead and just put on the main hand again. And yeah, same results. It was just significantly underperforming, and the Scourge was overperforming. And also the 2H, the Masterwork 2H, was also overperforming more than what I was expecting. So very interesting results from this. Next is the third test. This test is primarily going to focus on the AoE and should be the best showing for a weapon like the Noxious Scythe, as I wanted to test just how badly not having the extra tile of damage hurts the Masterwork 2H. This test was done at Abyssal Demons in the Wilderness over a few hours, doing like 6-minute tests. There was little bit more input on my side compared to the last test, but this is mainly just repositioning and looting. But aside from that, it didn't do much, and all the 2Hs had the exact same revolution bar. Starting off, we had what I expect to be the best showing, and that's the Noxious Scythe. It had a total of 1 million, almost 1.9 million damage, and a total of 218 kills. Next was the Lang weapons. I did a lot more manual input for these ones because you kinda have to, and I was trying to use their special a little bit. I'm not saying I went try hard, but I did try and help them. They did around 1.4 million damage and a total of 152 kills. And then came the Zuck Sword. The Zuck Sword did 1,766,000 damage. I had a total of 201 kills. And then came the Masterwork 2H. It was just shy of 1.8 million total damage, and it got a total of 207 kills. So, in summary, Masterwork 2H completely stomped the Lang weapons. This is pretty expected. The Lang weapons really do not do well in AoE settings, but they beat them by about 29% more damage and 32% more kills. Against the Zuck sword, I will tell you that these were very comparable in my tests, but the Masterwork 2H normally averaged about 1.7% more damage and about 3% more kills, but the low end of the Masterwork 2H, the Zuck sword's high end was beating, but on average, like the highs both, the Masterwork 2H was performing better. And then compared to the Noxious Scythe, to no surprise to me, it was beating the Masterwork 2H. Masterwork 2H was about 5% less damage and 5% less kills. This number was a little bit closer than what I thought. I thought it'd actually be closer, maybe like 7 to 10%. But yeah, Noxious Scythe is still the king for AoE, where it has really good accuracy. Okay, now for the fourth and final test, I really wanted to do somewhere where the Masterwork 2H should really shine, so I'm going to go somewhere that doesn't have 100% accuracy with most weapons. So I went to Hard Mode Twins, as it's a fairly high defensive boss, and when you things like Reaver's Ring and Dragon Battle special attack, which both of those combined give you a 15% accuracy nerf, you run into sub 100% accuracy pretty often. As each point of accuracy under 100% reduces your damage potential by the same amount, accuracy really is pretty important, and the Masterwork 2H has the highest accuracy between all of them. So let's see how this actually looks. So starting off, we had the Noxious Scythe as always, and it had a 96% starting off accuracy rate to a 67% after Quake and EOF stacks along with prayer buildup. Lang swords are the next thing I tested, and they went from an 81% to an 85% damage potential and accuracy after just EOF stacks. I tested the Zuck sword after that, and it started at 81% along with the Lang swords, and it got up to 92%, just mainly Quake is a big difference there. And then we had the Masterwork 2H. It had a starting accuracy of 86% and then ended up at 96% accuracy. And I also did retest this, but this time I used an accuracy aura. In this instance is actually Berserk aura. And this eventually got all of the weapons up to 100% accuracy, but the Masterwork 2H just got 100% accuracy from just the aura being activated. But the Zuck sword and Lang sword started out at 98% accuracy and went up to 100% accuracy from EOF stacks. And then the Noxious Scythe started at 93% accuracy and then eventually built up to 100% accuracy and damage potential. So in summary, this is where I felt the Masterwork 2H really shined the most, as it allows a little bit more freedom and allows you to change up your build and not always require an aura in some places. If you do not have tier 99 prayer and elder overloads, accuracy and therefore your full damage potential becomes much harder to obtain. I'm not saying it was a night and day difference, but for upgrading tier 95 to tier 100, it was extremely noticeable for no aura, and would be more noticeable if you were not using the tier 99 prayer and elder overload potions. And there are even more spots where I feel like this is the bigger issue, and where the Masterwork 2H could really shine and really would be best in slot. This would be bosses such as Virago, Angel of Death, raids, and any other high level encounter where you want to use Dragon Battle spec plus Reaver's Ring. And then you have Slayer. There's a lot of monsters there as well. Moss Golems, Abyssal Lords, and Armored Phantoms. Those are the ones that come to me right now, but there are other higher level Slayer creatures that if you melee them, you will have accuracy issues. So, now that all the tests are done, what is my final conclusion? That 95% of you freaking guys aren't subscribed, and you have to subscribe, please. It helps me feel better about myself at night. So just subscribe, help me. No, please send help. Honestly, the Masterwork 2H is a pretty damn good weapon, and honestly one of the first upgrades I would go for as a core upgrade path. I would prioritize the 2H over the Zuck Sword and the Lang pair for sure, just due to the price difference, the use cases, and my personal playstyle. I would honestly get it instead of a Scythe, which kind of hurts to say, but that's mainly because anywhere the Scythe is good, the Masterwork 2H is very similar, and the Masterwork 2H is still cheaper. With the price differences, you could get a Masterwork 2H and also a weapon like the Lanicus Spear, and probably be better off in a lot of locations. The other weapons still have their use cases and will be best in slot once you have the funds. I know I didn't test the Zuck Sword special attack and an EOF with the Masterwork Spear, but that would 100% beat the Masterwork 2H for single target damage for sure. But I mean, you would be required a 1 bill item plus an EOF, which is another 230 mil, plus a Masterwork Spear of Annihilation, which is another 250 mil, and you just added yourself more switches when you could just hit an enemy with the overcompensator and be fine. And then the Lang swords. You're looking at 2 bill, and this plus the Zuck Sword technically could be upgraded to tier 100, but then you're throwing another bill plus into an already extremely expensive alternative. They have crazy passive and a short cooldown, high damage special attack, and they have that crazy prayer bonus, but again, I'd even notice that prayer bonus till today. The Scourge plus tier 88 Dark Ice Sliver would set you back maybe 150 mil max, and could compete anywhere with the Lang swords at most spots, and would probably beat them if AFKing with any low input. So, do you kind of agree with my conclusion? Let me know in the comments. To me, it is 100% not dead content, which is good, but also maybe a little bit too good for its price point currently. It does have crazy high requirements to Iron Man, so I think it's pretty even there. But I think it offers a good spot between the absolute best in slot and just an extremely solid option, which is what this is. And it's something I'm going to be using because it still even has use cases where it might even be best in slot. So I love it. I kind of love the item. But that's everything. Thanks for watching the video. See ya.